And right now, the clock is ticking for former President Donald Trump and his legal team. They have until 5 p.m. Eastern today to respond to a motion from the special counsel's office asking for a protective order. Jack Smith's team wants the judge to forbid Trump from making public the evidence they are turning over to his defense. And they point to a series of alarming posts made by the former president over the last few days, including one which said, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." Let's get the latest on this and more from NBC's Vaughn Hilliard. Our Blaine Alexander is also with us, standing by in Atlanta, where we're expecting developments in the Georgia election probe. Vaughn, tell us more about why the special counsel is asking for this protective order and how Trump world is reacting.
Right. They submitted this filing on Friday, and in that filing, they made it clear that they're looking for this protective order, which would very specifically prohibit the former president from revealing evidence obtained through the discovery process. This during a criminal proceeding is when the Department of Justice turns over the evidence that is gathered, that it plans and intends to present during those criminal proceedings, and gives it to the defense counsel. But the concern from the Department of Justice is that Donald Trump has not only shown a keenness to revealing evidence, but also to putting pressure on potential witnesses. Mike Pence was one of those this weekend, in which he called his former vice president delusional. Of course, Mike Pence may be one of those witnesses to go on to the witness stand. There's also concern about tainting a potential jury pool. In that filing from the Department of Justice, they wrote in part, quote, it could have a harmful, chilling effect on witnesses or adversely affect the fair administration of justice in this case. Again, that 5 p.m. deadline is today, in which Trump's defense counsel will be able to respond. Over the weekend, they had put forward a motion to have extra time, but a judge rejected that motion, so that a filing should be expected here in the hours ahead.
So let's bring in former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuade to react to this. Barbara, how could Trump publicizing evidence be dangerous or potentially compromise the case?
Well, imagine if he were to say things like he's already been saying about, Mike Pence is a bad person. Mike Pence is a liar. That could invite intimidation or harassment from members of the public. And it could also have a chilling effect on the witness themselves. It might cause them to rein in their own testimony or be reluctant to come testify if they know that they will be targeted by Trump and his followers. So it's very bad for the integrity of the evidence in the trial in this case.
So is the post that he already put out, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you," is that witness tampering or intimidation, something he's already been warned against?
Well, it's very vague, isn't it? And I think it's deliberately vague. When he says things like this, he can say, this is just political speech. I mean, those who are persecuting me. And I think the judge is going to find herself in a very challenging situation here, because I think he's going to continue to push the limits and bait her, knowing that she is in a no-win situation. On the one hand, if she enters a protective order, a gag order, to tell him to stop saying all of these things, then he's going to cry foul and say, never before in the history of America has a presidential candidate been gagged from campaigning and defending himself. On the other hand, if she does not enter an order to gag him from saying these things, then we're going to see witnesses continue to be targeted. And even if it does not have a chilling effect on their testimony, I think it puts their lives in danger. In the same way Trump's call to action for January 6th was seen as a call to attack, I think the same thing could be said about his calls to action about going after people who are witnesses against him.
Trump's already saying there's no way he can get a fair trial, with Judge Chutkan saying that he will, quote, immediately be asking for recusal of this judge on very powerful grounds, end quote. Barb, do you see any reason for recusal?
No. Recusal comes when there is a conflict of interest. The mere fact that someone may have ruled against your party, ruled against your interests in the past, does not mean the person can't be fair. You have to show something like a financial stake in the outcome of the case, or a family member who's affected by the outcome of the case. None of those things are present here, so I don't think that we're going to see a recusal in this case. And remember, it's not the judge who decides the case, it's a jury. And I'm confident they can find 12 people who are unbiased and can be fair in this case, even if it means a lengthy voir dire process.
And then, of course, we're also keeping an eye on Georgia, Blaine, where the fourth criminal indictment of Donald Trump could come any day. How is Fulton County preparing?
Well, we're watching it very closely, Anna. You're right. We are officially at the start of week 2 of this 3-week period that the DA here has kind of laid out, in which she strongly indicated that we are going to hear her charging decision. So the biggest difference here between this week and last week, Anna, is the presence of security. Look behind me. I've been standing in front of this Fulton County courthouse for days on end for the better part of 2.5 years. This is very familiar territory. We've never seen it look like this. Both sides of the street are now impassable. They're being blocked by law enforcement cars. Cars are not allowed to drive now in front of this courthouse. More barricades, more metal barricades have gone up as well. So certainly security is increasing. The other thing that we're also gaining is a little bit more insight as the DA prepares to present her case to a grand jury here in Fulton County. Now, we don't know when that's going to happen. We don't know what that's going to look like, but we do know that subpoenas have started to go out for witnesses to appear before this grand jury. For instance, one journalist who stumbled upon a group of the alternate electors back in 2020. He's received a subpoena to come forward and testify, as has a former state lawmaker who was sitting in that panel, that now kind of infamous panel where Rudy Giuliani came down and presented before Georgia lawmakers. She was a member of that panel. She has confirmed that she has received a subpoena to testify as well. So certainly seeing things starting to move, starting to change. Again, we don't know when it's going to happen, but certainly watching things very closely, Anna.
Barbara, it just feels like whiplash. 3 indictments against a former president in 4 months and potentially another indictment on the way. Just your reaction to this being the reality right now.
Yeah, I think that if we had more time, we might see these indictments spaced out more. But I think that all of these prosecutors are scrambling to get their ducks in a row so that they can have these cases tried before the November 2024 election. Of course, the fact that they're all coming just gives Donald Trump more fodder to say, look, they're coming after me just because I'm the leading Republican candidate for president. But of course, all of this is about holding him accountable for conduct that occurred, almost 3 years ago. So the fact that they're coming together really is more coincidence than anything, because these prosecutors work promptly but thoroughly to bring their cases as soon as they reasonably can do so.
And I imagine that a lot of these cases are somewhat complicated, and they wanted to have a sure case before actually moving forward with any type of indictment. We've been hearing a lot of one of Trump's lawyers laying out potential defense arguments. Here's what John Lauro had to say about Trump's pressure campaign on Mike Pence. Take a listen.
He said the president asked him to violate the Constitution, which is another way of saying he asked him to break the law.
He never said. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. A technical violation of the Constitution is not a violation of criminal law. That's just plain wrong. And to say that is contrary to decades of legal statutes.
Let's get out.
Barbara, what do you think of that argument?
I think it is John Lauro who is wrong. The statutes that are violated here are the ones alleged in the indictment. So by asking Mike Pence to just make a little violation of the Constitution is what amounts to that deprivation of rights and that conspiracy to defraud the United States and that obstruction of an official proceeding. And so I think he was trying to poison the public and maybe even the jury pool by suggesting that all of this is legal, but none of that is going to hold up in court.